Welcome to the Pathways to Success. I'm Julian Placino, recruiting professional turned success speaker, show host, and media entrepreneur. This show is dedicated to helping you find your unique pathway to success by having conversations that educate, inspire, and transform. Together, we'll interview some of the world's greatest leaders and uncover their secrets to success. Thanks for tuning in, and on to the show. Welcome to episode 205 of the Pathways to Success, where we have conversations with inspiring leaders to help you find your unique pathway to success. I'm Julian Placino, your host, and we have yet another great show in store for you today. Today's episode is sponsored by Code Up. Code Up is the premier career accelerator in Texas. Code Up's web development and data science programs take you from beginner to job-ready professional in weeks from the comfort of your own home. Code Up's data science program has an 88% employment rate, and their web development program has an incredible 99% employment rate. Code Up is so confident in their programs that if you don't find a career in field within 6 months of graduating, you'll receive a 100% tuition refund. So if you are ready to start your career in web development or data science, I recommend you check out Code Up at codeup.com. That's CODEUP.com. I am very excited to welcome our featured guest, Chip Rosales, Managing Partner at Rogue Marketing Agency. Chip, welcome to the Pathways
Julian,
to Success.
I'm so glad to be here. It's so great to finally get to do this. So thank you for having me. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely, and thank you for being here. And truly, I have enjoyed getting to know you over the past couple of months through, of course, our mutual organization, through Vistage and through Dawn. And what's really amazing is our relationship has already bore fruit.
That's right.
In the form of partnership and project work. So,
you want to work with successful people. You want to work with infectious people. And I would say that that's definitely something that you've got. You've got a lot of charisma and infection. Well, good in the good way. In the good way.
I greatly appreciate that. So, well, Chip, I want to create some context for our audience, and I want to learn more about Rogue. Tell us, what is Rogue Marketing Agency?
Well, Rogue Marketing, it's kind of a little bit of a loaded question because if you think about a marketing agency, everybody's got a perspective. They've thought about that marketing agency that they work with. And Rogue really set out to be everything that those agencies weren't. Not that they're bad, not that they're the wrong thing. They just weren't right for what we were trying to do. So it's kind of like saying Scorsese's a director, or Da Vinci's an artist, or Big Ben's a clock. All those things are true. And that would be true about Rogue. Rogue is a marketing agency, but Rogue is so much more than a marketing agency. We really consider ourselves business builders who carry a marketing toolbox. And so what that means for us is that individuals who are coming to us are growth-oriented companies. They have something really big that they want to do. They want to move into a new market. They've got a new demographic that they can't seem to tap into. Maybe they've acquired a company and they don't know how to fold it into the rest of the organization. Maybe they want to sell their business. Something big is happening, but you know what? They know where they want to go, but they're not exactly sure how to get there. And just going someplace and saying, hey, agency, can you create a new website for me? Hey, agency, could you write me 20 blog posts? It just doesn't cut it. They need somebody who has business savvy, business acumen, wants to sit in that seat, the co-pilot seat, and actually help them actually grow this business. And so they're looking for a business builder who just happens to carry a marketing toolbox. And Rogue set out to be just that.
And that is very much what I've come to learn about your organization specifically. It's not just digital marketing. It's not just pay-per-click. It is like, what is the underlying reason for doing what it is that you're doing? And that is what I think you really
we want to be. We've kind of taken on this term smarketing. And the idea is it's sales enablement plus marketing execution, and you put those two things together and it becomes smarketing. And we'd like to be thought of as something that's beyond sales, beyond marketing. It's really the two working together, and it's trying to go towards some outcome that we actually achieve.
And I definitely want to jump into more of your insights and philosophies about marketing. But I am also curious about the genesis story. How did Rogue come into being?
Well, Rogue never should have happened. I never intended to start Rogue. That was not the plan. I had actually gone to school to actually be in television news. So while I kind of feel like it's weird having all these cameras on me now, once upon a time, that was what I went to school for. I went to the University of Texas in the journalism school, highly competitive. It was going to be great. That's what I was going to do. Long story short, I found out how much money I was not going to be making when I got out of school, and I realized, oh, I'm getting married, and I want to start a family, and all these things are going to happen. How am I going to pay my rent? And so I went looking for something else, and I was approached by a management consulting company. And they said, hey, we're looking for people who know how to communicate. And if you know how to communicate, you'll do well here. And so I did. I went over there for 3 years. I learned a whole heck of a lot. I actually really didn't enjoy my job too much because I was shackled. I had to do it their way. Everything had to be their way. It was medical plan descriptions, and there's just only so much creativity you can have in medical plan descriptions. And so while I learned a lot, and there was this huge progression path, I took an opportunity at a company called EDS.
EDS.
And actually, I wasn't their first choice, so that was interesting. I got the call. I was really, really disappointed, and they called me 24 hours later, and they said, hey, remember how we told you we wanted to keep your name on file? Maybe we'd like to have you, try for another position, and you kind of didn't believe us. Well, guess what? This new opportunity just came up. It's for this thing called web hosting. We don't even know what that actually is, but we have an opportunity for a marketing person to come on and do web hosting. So I took on that role and that job at EDS. I spent 7 years there, went from a specialist to a director, which was a big deal. That's a huge jump, and really I can only attribute it to mentors and people who protected me, let me do some crazy things, ask why a lot. I do ask why a lot, like, why are we doing it this way? It doesn't have to be that way. Why in the world would we do it this way? And they let me do that. We had success. Caused a lot of problems too. We ruffled feathers. We did some of that stuff too, right? But in the process, they were like, hey, we're going to protect you. We're going to let this thing come to fruition. And then I was recruited to be the chief marketing officer at another company here in Dallas. It was a $300 million business. And I think I was 28, 29, something like that. And I was recruited to be the chief marketing officer over there. Wow. Super big opportunity, and excited to do that. And I did that for three and a half years, and 2008 hit. And the whole world fell out. And the company said, we don't need sales and we don't need marketing. We just need a great product. And we're going to put all our money into that. And you've done a great job, but we don't need you. And I said, well, that's okay, because I'm amazing. I've done all this really great stuff, and I will find another opportunity somewhere. But it was 2008, and there weren't any more opportunities. And I was still pretty young, and I didn't know that. So I started looking, and I couldn't find it. And then I went the exact opposite way. I decided, well, maybe I'm actually not any good. Maybe I really don't know a thing about marketing. Maybe I really can't do anything in this realm. And so I kind of took a turn a different way. And I had this chance encounter with somebody that I was coaching soccer with. And he said, hey, I'm doing this thing for mailbox money with this guy, and I really don't know anything about marketing, but I know you do. I can't help him anymore, and I'd like you to help him. And I tried to convince him that I didn't know anything about marketing, and that I was actually the stupidest guy on the face of the planet to do this, and why in the world would he want me? And he said, yeah, I'm actually picking you up tomorrow, and we're going to go meet this guy. And so he did, and so always say yes. Always say yes when somebody says, come to a meeting with me or do that. Everybody say yes. And I did. And when I did, 6 hours later, we walked out, and I had completely rebranded him. I had completely rethought through his value proposition. I had helped him reframe what he was doing and the problems he was going to solve. And I had reignited my own spark inside to say, hey, I actually am kind of good at this stuff. And what that client actually helped me learn was that I don't have to do it for a corporation. I had only seen it as I was going to be in a blue chip, I was going to be in a Fortune 1000 or Fortune 100. There's only one way to do it. And I realized I didn't have to plot that course, and just that little bit of rogueness, it was like, hey, this is actually what I want to do. This is actually a better way. And it was a hard road. It's a hard path to go. It's not for everybody, but at the same point in time, it's probably the only path. I can't imagine going back to a 9 to 5 for somebody else's corporation. I love doing the work. I just can't imagine not doing it for me.
What was the first customer acquisition? How did you get your first customer after that experience with your friend?
Well, then I played the network game. And honestly, Rogue has grown primarily through the network game. It's through either having opportunities like this to speak and talk, or it's through EDS was no small place. And all of those people were really, really smart. And all of them went to other places. And so then they just remember, hey, Chip, I remember when you did such, and that was really helpful. And then, of course, I've got an entire team behind me now. And they all have their networks where they come from just as great pedigrees, right? And so they come from these different places. And Rogue, although we've tried a variety of things, advertising and different things to try to get people to come invest and partner up with Rogue, it's always like 93% of the time, right? It's always been somebody's referral and somebody's like that. And we've been privileged to grow.
I want to talk about some of those unique marketing insights and specifically the misconceptions about marketing. How do you think we should think about marketing overall as a discipline?
Well, I think there's probably two things I would say. One, I think that just because you have a great product or a great service and you build something amazing and you build something great, it doesn't mean that somebody's automatically going to come. And I think that's a big misconception. I think people still believe that if you've got the right name, if you've got the right feature set, if your thing has AR but something else didn't, that because of these benefits and these improvements that just naturally people are going to figure it out and they're going to find their way to you. And it's just not the way it works. The distribution matters, how you promote and what you say and when you say it, all of that matters. And I think that there's a misconception that you can kind of do a lot of this without going those extra steps. They would rather spend, 95% of the money on the technology and the piece of product or the service, and they forget about the promotion of it. I would say that's one. And then the other thing I think that I come across maybe even more frequently is just that when you speak with marketing agencies, the belief is that we're all saying the same thing when we say the same words. So there's a lot of buzzwords, there's a lot of terminology in there, and I say that marketing has a vocabulary problem. And really what it probably is that we have businesses need to ask a question or two more. What do you mean when you say revenue optimization? What do you mean when you say SEO? What do you mean when you say any of the things that are these great buzzwords? What does that actually mean to you? And I think that just we hear these things and it sounds the same. So if you're the same and you cost a little more, well then you're just automatically discounted. And you've had an opportunity to work with us, and so in doing some of that, you've realized that some of those we're not the same. We're not like other places and the people that, some other teams that you may have talked to. And the reason is because we actually are defining things a little bit differently. And although we're using similar words, we don't mean the same thing.
So let me ask you this then. You're working with a company and their underlying issue is, I want to improve marketing, whatever that means. What would you say are the most important questions that company needs to ask itself first to define whatever that is?
The first thing I would say, and this is the way we would pursue it, would be something to the effect of, do you believe what we believe? And we would share what we believe. And the thing is that it is nearly impossible to convince somebody to believe something that they don't already believe. So if you don't believe in marketing and you don't believe that marketing can help you, there's very, very little that I could ever say that's going to convince you otherwise. You have to come to that realization yourself. So a first thing I would say is, do you believe what I believe? The second thing I would say is that we, at Rogue, what we're going to do is we're going to ask what we would think are just really good questions. And I think some of that is about allowing the freedom and allowing the space for somebody to come to realizations on their own. You know what? I never thought about that. I do wonder what that would look like. To the point where, and like this conversation right now, like if you're not listening to what I'm saying, right, then this conversation is just a flat conversation. If I'm not listening to what you're saying, it's the same thing. So this idea of like, if I ask the right question and I go, oh, wait, that did make me think of something else. And when I think about that, then it inspires me to ask you something different. And we go deeper and we go deeper. Now we're starting to actually believe the same things. We've come to the realization, and I've had an insight that you brought to me that starts to help me think, oh, these guys are different. I could see how they could help me. So we ask a lot of questions. And one of the things that I'm most proud of is when somebody will say something like, that's a really good question. I never thought about that. And sometimes jokingly, I probably shouldn't say this, but jokingly, sometimes we'll put on the whiteboard behind us. We aren't always on a camera, right? And we'll put a little tack like Rogue One client. Like we just put that little rogue on there. Like they said we asked a really good question. And that's what we're looking for. We want to be known as the people who are asking the questions that people aren't, so that we can inspire really good work.
So what would you say if there was a kind of overall mantra that guides your marketing philosophies, would you say?
One of the things we would say is that technology and tools don't solve problems. That would definitely be something. And I think too often people think about the technology and the tools that are out there and they say that's going to solve my problem. I think that would probably be one of the biggest ones.
Gotcha. And I know when we were visiting before the cameras turned on, you and I have a real deep appreciation for entrepreneurship and not settling to do mediocre work. So what would you say is your personal why behind business, behind Rogue, and what you do?
My desire is for marketing to be valued. Mm-hmm. I think that too often marketing gets relegated to the arts and crafts department. It's the make it pretty department.
Yeah.
And that is not, I think marketing has a role in that. I do think there's a component of that we bring, and we can bring polish and shine and charisma and energy and all of those things. But it is not the arts and crafts department. And I think too often that's what it gets relegated to. And so then what happens is, a company doesn't ever get rid of their lawyer or their accountant or these people inside that are doing that. You don't go to your doctor and second guess everything that they're saying. There's a level of trust and authority that comes from all that, and that does not happen in the marketing realm. And so we've worked really hard to be able to show that there's data and there's data and science and there's art. And I think you need both. We do a lot, if you think that marketing has nothing to do with math, well, that's kind of a thing. It was like, hey, you won't need any math here. All you're gonna have to do is make it pretty. That's not true. Yeah. It's not. There's so much math that's involved. There's so many formulas and things that you've got to think through. And I think that's a component of this, that I want marketing to be valued. It doesn't feel good when it's so easily discarded. And the work that you pour your heart and your soul and your energy into can just be relegated to something that's not important because, we're just going to go put some more money into the technology. Yeah. And I think that's why I get up. That's what I do. And I want to surround myself with people who are inspired the same way. I call ourselves the little misfit toys. We've all got little special somethings, right? We're all a little Rogue. We've all got a little chip on our shoulder. Yeah. I just touched that speaker. We've all got little chips on our shoulder. And that's a good thing because, somebody said you couldn't. Somebody said it's not going to happen. Somebody said, and we're saying, why not? Let's try. And we do. A lot of experimentation.
And when it's done well, it absolutely makes a difference. So I appreciate you sharing that. So Chip, we're going to take a quick commercial break to hear from our sponsors.
You want to transition out of your career and do something tech related. CodeUp is the place for you. When I came to CodeUp, I was actually working at a chain hair salon. It was just starting not to be for me anymore. My goals were to never work a weekend ever again, to have full health care and benefits, and to just have more time with my son. And now I've met all of those goals. I don't have any regrets. I just regret not coming sooner when I saw those billboards and I was driving down the highway.
And we're back with Chip Rosales, managing partner at Rogue Marketing. So Chip, before we get kicked off with Keys to Success, a small token of appreciation for you coming on the show.
This is exciting.
From our team here at Pathways to Success, courtesy of our friends at Dead Soxy. And it is none other than your own very own custom designed Pathways to Success.
Oh, those are awesome. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Sock.
Thank you very much.
So thank you, Dead Soxy, and of course, Jason Simmons for supporting the show. So Chip, I want to jump into Keys to Success. And like I mentioned to you, I've always been fascinated about how do people achieve success. And by interviewing people who've made incredible results, they sort of leave these breadcrumbs. And I want to unpack what that is for you. And I know you're passionate about speaking on how to discover your superpower. What does this mean?
I think, when you're talking about breadcrumbs and what success looks like and stuff, I think that one of the biggest breadcrumbs that can come is that you know what your strengths are. You know who you are. And in knowing who you are, then you know what makes you strong. And I think that's too often, we can probably talk a little bit about improvements, and I'm really big into self-improvement and those things. But from a component of being able to understand where you're already strong and how to bring that to an organization, I think that's really important. So I always, when I'm talking with a client, I want to know what a client has, what their superpowers are. For me, one of my superpowers is the ability to sit in the seat of a client. And so what I'm always doing is when we're having our internal meetings or whatever, I'm actually taking that perspective of what it's like to be a CMO. What's it like to be the person who's actually signing the checks for somebody else? How does this feel? Well, this isn't moving fast enough. Well, how are they feeling about that? And so one of the superpowers I have and I bring to my team is that ability to do just that, to sit in the seat of the client and say, you know what, they're actually giving us some really good feedback. Here's that feedback, and here's why that's a gift to us. By them saying these things, that's really amazing. Now, I'm always looking for people who know who they are. And so for people who work at Rogue, we pride ourselves on candor, we pride ourselves on a point of view. And that's what makes us Rogue. And so if you don't have a point of view, then you're probably not going to have a really good time at Rogue. But if you do have a point of view, then you probably know what you're strong in, and you're probably able to talk about what your superpowers are. What is it that you can bring to the team? How can you help us move to the outcome that we're trying to drive? And of course, our whole job is to leverage that group of misfit toys I was just talking about. It's to leverage all of those superpowers that maybe were discounted somewhere else. Pull that together and say that this was perfect for a company that's trying to scale or grow or sell or do something really big but doesn't know how to get there.
You said one of your superpowers was the ability to sit in the seat of a CMO, is that correct?
Yes.
How did you first come to know that was actually a superpower?
I think, I mentioned that I had the opportunity to sit in the CMO. I was already sitting in the CMO seat, right? So then when I took on the role of supporting a CMO, it was very easy for me to be able to say, I remember when I would go to the CEO and I tried to sell this idea. Why did they not go for it? What was uninspiring, or what did they need extra support on? And the ability to have just sat in some of those chairs already helped. And then along the way, just being inquisitive and just asking these things. So that's something too often in our realm, in the marketing realm, too often people don't ask the clients what they're thinking, what they're feeling, how they do it. They're just delivering whatever the statement of work said. They're delivering to whatever it was that's there. But just having a candid conversation or going to clients and saying, what is it that really makes all this tick? Too often people are afraid to talk. They're afraid to talk to somebody because they don't want somebody to have said something negative or something bad. And we just embrace it. And by embracing it, I think we just become stronger. And I think that's what happened. I was just doing that. It was a fluke. But in the realm of doing that, then I sit in a room and I go, our client would think about it this way. Or when I was sitting in that seat, this is what I did. And I think that's probably what they're feeling. Let's go and validate it. And we can do that.
How would you say that you help your team cultivate their superpowers or get to know what they actually are?
First thing is again, just asking them.
Yeah.
And it's actually making them somewhat uncomfortable with the idea of that they have a superpower. And I'm really forcing them and asking them questions about what is it that they're amazing at. Now we do surveys, we do tests, we do some of those kinds of things to try to hone in on. But the other thing is we try to spot something and we try to articulate it and help them see that this is a strength and something that they can bring to them. But primarily those who come to Rogue already know who they are and they already know what their strengths are. And sometimes they've tried to hide it because it was something that was negative somewhere else, and it turns out to be something that just helps them explode in an entrepreneurial environment.
In an entrepreneurial environment.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I have a person who used to work for us, and I actually started conversations with clients to say, I will tell you, like 90% of the time, this person is going to say something and it's going to sound so off the wall. And what I want you to do is just embrace it. And I want you to go with it because this guy is such a different thinker, and that is his superpower. And while it doesn't seem connected to you, I promise you that I have seen through my experience that it is, and that you need to allow it to play itself out. Don't discount it. Don't think that, hey, this person wasn't paying attention or they're asking something stupid. Go with it. And once we started doing that, for a while, this would just happen in the room, and they didn't understand, and we'd hear later, things, and so we started going preemptively and proactively and saying, hey, this is a special tool in our toolbox. This is something that's really, really cool about this person, and I want you to go with it. And afterwards, we'd start hearing, man, that was a really different way to think about it. I never thought. And the thing is too often we we tell somebody to stop and to conform and to do some of that stuff. And I think there's a place for some of that, but in this scenario, it's exactly what we needed to be able to help them break through and to do something completely different.
And honestly, I'm as a recruiter, right? It's like I'm passionate about helping other people find their gifts and talents, because I really believe there seems to be this intersection of your talents, your areas of interest, and what creates value for others, right? So I'm really big into discovering this idea of a superpower. So what kind of advice would you have for our viewers, for our listeners, to take steps to begin to realize what their superpower is?
One of the other steps that we're going to talk about is a little bit about self-awareness, but I think the ability to actually kind of step outside of yourself and watch and replay what's going on in your mind, and actually putting yourself through that kind of an exercise, saying, how did this go? Where was there a moment where you saw somebody light up, or there was a spark, or there was some sort of follow-up action that you didn't expect? Look for some of those things that were somewhat unexpected, and you're going to find out that that's actually a strength. Or look for something where there's a visceral reaction, positive or negative. I think you're going to find that that's a positive thing for you, because otherwise you're just you're meh. You're in the middle, right? I'd rather be on one side or the other and actually be going to those areas and find out that you're for something. And I think when you figure that out, then what you've got to find is the right organization you're for.
Right.
And I wouldn't shy away from those things. I would go into them full-hearted, and hopefully you come in with organizations like Rogue, who we specifically ask you, what is it that you do, and tell me about those chips on your shoulder. Tell me about something that you've been told was kind of a negative that you actually think is a positive. Let's talk about those. And we do that all the time in interviews.
I think something that you said that was key, that resonated with me, was a visceral reaction, right? I interviewed a comedian one time, Bob Stromberg, and he says, Julian, remember, you have to bite back at the things that bite you.
Interesting.
In other words, pay attention to the way that you are. What are the activities that give you energy? What do you do whenever time just goes by? Like, those are clues of what your superpower could continue to be.
Absolutely. And there's a place for everybody, right? There really is. Even if you make it yourself, right? You know, if you're a writer and you write your own show, your own musical, your own play, like, so what? Nobody hired you, nobody casted you. Well, you've now cast yourself by doing it. And there's story after story after story of people just like that. And I think there's a place for all of these skills and all of these tools that we have, if we just explore for them.
There really is. And the thing that I see is that sometimes people are not as intentional as I think perhaps they should be about that discovery process, whether it's fear or uncertainty or whatnot.
Yeah.
So we've already kind of touched on it. So through self-awareness, right? How are you defining what self-awareness is, and why is it important for us to become more self-aware?
I love what you just said about the intentionality of it.
Yeah.
So I think when I'm thinking of self-awareness, I'm thinking about it through three lenses. One, it's the self-awareness that you yourself can find. It's very easy to see something once you've seen it, right? You're like, oh wow, you do this marketing program and it was amazing and it was so obvious, and that little insight was the insight. Well, it's obvious once we saw it, but it took us, 5 months of experiments and trying different things and 20 years of hard work to actually come up with that, right? So these overnight successes are not as overnight as they look, right? But there's some self-awareness that takes place. There's some outward awareness where people you trust can come to you and have conversations with you, tough conversations, real conversations with you, and say, hey, this is something I'm seeing. And then I think there's this other component of awareness where you're actually inviting opportunities and you're forcing that uncomfortableness so that people can kind of grow through that. So on that first one where it's self-awareness, one of the ways that I've done it, one of the tools that I've done is I record all of my sales calls.
Wow.
Nearly all of my sales calls. I record meetings. And what I do is I'm a real exciting guy, because what I'll do is I will listen to these things. They are painful. They are hard to listen to. And I'm going to probably do the same thing with this podcast, right? I'm going to go and look at it, and because I'm going to be, man, I wish I would have said that differently. Or, oh, I hated how I said this thing about Rogue, right? I wish I could have said this line a little bit better, right? But the thing is that I become aware of what it is that I'd like to project, what I'd like to be saying, but the only way I can do that is by stepping out of it and actually looking back at it. And so while it's a terrible thing to do, or it feels awful at first, it's one of my best practices, and I do it all the time. And now I've instituted it inside of our organization, and almost everybody in our organization is doing the same thing. We're better presenters for it, we're better business people for it, etc. I have 3 people who can speak into my life and do it with unabashed. They can say whatever the heck they want to, those people are really, really important, because those people are going to tell you the truth. Hey, you know what? I don't think you should have said it that way. Like, you should have thought about it this other way, or you probably were misunderstood, or hey, turn your business voice off. Whatever those things are, there's somebody. There's three people in my world. Not that because there's only three people, but there are three people who consistently can do that in my realm, and that helps me become self-aware. Now, here's the thing: you have to accept that. You have to look at them as going, they're for me. They're rowing the same direction I am. They want what I want. And because of all of that, I need to look at that feedback as a gift. And so that's the second component of that. And then the third one, I would say, is creating those opportunities for a little bit of uncomfortableness. And so sometimes I'll do that in meetings. I did this. My kids are a little older now, but we used to do things around the table where we would have conversations, like there would be these random conversations, and we would just read them out of things. It's like, hey, what do you think about X, Y, and Z? And then everybody kind of had to give an answer.
How cool.
Well, one of the things that we did was we started asking nearly every day, how have you failed today? And I brought that into my office environment too, because around my kids, it could be something like I failed to say I'm sorry to somebody on the playground. It could have been I failed to draw this hand that I was trying to do in art class. I could never quite do it. But the thing is that if you can put it in your mind that it's okay to fail, and that you can put it, and you're okay with talking about it, and you can actually say, I tried something, and it was a little bit beyond me, pretty soon, if you keep trying some of that stuff, it's not as beyond you as you think. Your first podcast, probably, I've done the podcast thing too, right? We had 60 some odd episodes or whatever, right? The first podcast it's awful, but it's way better than never having done it before. And I don't remember what you said this podcast's number is, but whatever number that is, it's way better than what it was before, and it's not going to be anywhere near as good as it'll be in 2024, right? And the thing is if you don't know how you failed and you can't think about, man, I wish I would have done something a little bit different, but you have to be willing to be self-aware. And I think it's an undervalued skill. It's something that people just don't take the time to take that stock of who they are and what they're doing and improve themselves in that way.
There's an aspect of the story that's coming to me right now that I really want to learn the answer to. When I first met you, it was the day that we did processing at Vistage, and that was a crazy experience, first of all.
Yeah,
right?
It was a crazy experience.
But when I heard you speak, like you asked questions with such mastery, I just assumed that you were always so awesome at business, right? But you told a story earlier of how you thought you sucked at marketing, but you went through a kind of experience that took you from maybe imposter syndrome to belief in yourself. What happened there, and how would you describe that process? Because without that, there would be no Rogue.
That's a great question. The way I'm thinking about it is I can think of two biographies that I paid attention to. One, and really date myself, is Karen Carpenter. She's from like the 1960s. I actually consider her like the best singer. She's just an incredible singer. And Michael Jackson is the second one. Two individuals that both did the very same thing. And it started me on that best practice I just talked about, which was videoing yourself, listening to yourself, watching yourself. I have a performing background, and so one of the things is that it is awful to hear yourself and listen to yourself and watch yourself. But the thing is that pretty soon you're going to be on a stage somewhere, you're going to be giving a concert, you're going to be doing something, and the whole world's watching. So why not stand in front of a camera like we're doing right now and actually watch what's happening and do that and actually critique and evaluate yourself and do it over and over till you're really comfortable with what it is. And the thing that was interesting about Karen Carpenter and Michael Jackson is the stories, the lore is they can walk into a studio and they would walk out after the first take. But it's a lie. It's not true. What happened was they were in studios just like this, all by themselves, and they would record themselves, and they'd get it to a point where they were happy with it. And then they could go into a studio and do it for the first time. Yeah. And that's what's happening, I think. And that's what I saw was there's this opportunity to enter into the ring and go do the thing and mess up and not do well. And evaluate it and go, I could do it better next time, and the next time you do, and you see some success. And pretty soon, what was chapter 1 is now chapter 20, and it's a completely different book.
There really is something about the process of doing and looking at the feedback, as you mentioned, and continuing to improve, that continuous improvement. How do you deal with fear, Chip? When you're afraid of something, how do you push past it?
Well, I don't think we can walk away from fear.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think we have to really want to do whatever it is that we need, whatever we're afraid of, right? We really have to want to do it, otherwise you are going to walk away from it.
Yeah.
But provided that it's something that you really want to do, then I think I have to just rely on previous successes and say something to the effect of, I've been in a situation kind of like this before, and you know, you entered in that ring and it worked out, or it didn't, and I know that I can, you know, grow myself out of this. And that would probably be that. I think of Tim Ferriss. You've probably seen his thing. Mm-hmm. And he talks about a good idea, which I really like, which is like, we don't need to be fearless, we just need to fear less.
Fearless.
And I don't think anybody's fearless. Nobody's doing that. But I do think people can exude some confidence and put some charisma on there and do some of that stuff so that you can walk into an environment and actually be less fearful of it.
Chip, I want to close with one final key to success here, and that is this idea of staying curious, like leveraging curiosity to really drive results. Tell us about that.
In my realm, I think that if you're not curious, you're kind of dead.
Yeah.
And what I would say is curiosity really speaks to how much you care about somebody. Again, if this was just a conversation where you had written down all the questions and you just said them, and I know they're not because you didn't tell me all this stuff, right? So, and you've been like, hey, I'm keying off of this, right? But the thing is that I know that you actually care about what's happening right this second.
Yeah.
And in doing that, that's what I see when I see curiosity. Our belief at Rogue is that this is an open book test. There is nothing out in the marketing realm that you can't go and learn, look up on Google, read a book about, etc. You just have to care enough to keep expanding and do some of that. I think that there's a component of that really matters. When somebody comes to me and says, you know, hey, I'd like to be a little bit more like you, and what would you do? One of the things I do is I read at least a book a month. Mm-hmm. I would say there's months where I read a book a week. There's where I read multiple books. But the thing is that I'm always putting something new into my mind and in trying to figure out how to connect the dots to whatever it is that we're doing. It's not always a marketing thing. It could be anthropology. It could be neuropersuasion. It could be sales something. It could be a biography on Michael Jackson. It could be any number of things. And if we're curious enough, that's going to be a great thing. In my realm, people don't know how to get to where they're trying to go. Mm-hmm. And so I've tried to assemble tools around me of people who are curious. Lifelong learners is what we would call them. Yeah. And the idea being that these people, the people who work for me right now, I mean, I've got people who are on TikTok who are doing all these side projects, right? I've got a guy who writes comics. I have people who have made their own cheese, who do their own shoes, but the thing is, they're curious.
Yeah.
And that makes them better marketers. And I think it makes better business people. And so I say, if you're not willing to stay curious, then you're not going to be a very happy person. And curiosity is what tells our clients that we actually care.
In curiosity, you almost need to cultivate a personality of humility because you're always in a position of constant learning. And that absolutely makes sense.
I think it's true.
Yeah. Chip, we are almost out of time, but I want to go through a few of these kind of lightning round questions just to kind of get to know you and your personality just a little bit more. So Chip, what's your favorite food?
This one's easy. I love tacos and I love fried chicken. And
tacos and fried chicken?
And it's why I will never have abs.
What kind of music are you listening to right now?
100%, never waver. I'm a country music fan.
Country music fan.
When country wasn't cool, and 80s and 90s would be my favorite.
What are you binge watching on Netflix or streaming or anything like that right now?
Actually, interestingly, I'm looking at Mad Men.
Mad Men,
and I'm
we're watching
having
Mad Men
a
right
great
now.
time.
Yeah.
Specifically at the stories and the ways that they turned the pitches and what they did, and there's some really cool things that I'm picking up and trying to bring to the office. Actually, no, there's some things I'm not trying to bring to the office from Mad Men, by the way. But other things, some of that marketing stuff is there's some smart marketing in there.
What is something that you're really proud of that no one really knows about?
Really proud of. You know, we were talking about this idea of never wanting to go back to a corporate job and all that kind of stuff. And there is a little bit of like, I'm not afraid of being on the outside anymore. We've been doing this for 10 years. So like, I think it's going to work out, right? That's a really good thing. But one of the things that's been the best part of having your own business and doing that is that I get to do the things that are important to me. Mm-hmm. Whether that is I'm around when my kids are coming home from school. That's something I'm proud of. But the other thing is that I'm able to go on their mission trips and their church things. I went to the beach just a week ago, and in a week I'm going on a mission trip with 250 of my favorite high schoolers.
Wow.
We're going to Florida, and there's a mission trip that's going to be happening, right? And I've been able to do that every year since my daughter's been in middle school. And it's something, she's a sophomore in college now. So like we've been able to do that, and that's something that I've built a team around me that can keep things going when I'm not there. I don't have to physically be in the country even, and things happen. And that's something I'm proud of. I'm proud of the fact that I'm able to do something I really, really enjoy, and then I'm able to go and do other things that I really, really enjoy.
I love that. Chip, final question here for you. The show is called The Pathways to Success. How do you personally define what success is?
I think if you know who you are, and in the spirituality realm, if you know whose you are, and you know what you stand for, then you're successful. If you know who you are and what you stand for, then you can be successful. You can go to bed at night really happy, and you can wake up with a lot of purpose and ready to go. And I would say that's success.
I love that. Chip, this has been an absolute pleasure. Please tell our audience how to connect with you, follow you, work with you, check out Rogue. Tell us all this.
We would love all sorts of people to come and check us out, and you can do that at gorogue.net. So that's GOROGUE.net. You can also follow me on LinkedIn at Chip Rosales.
And we'll make sure to have all of your contact information in the show notes as well. So this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for being on the show.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. And everyone else, thank you all for tuning in to another episode of The Pathways to Success. As always, make sure to subscribe, comment, and share. And we'll see you next time on the next episode of The Pathways to Success.